Welcome back to the Timeless File, where history's strangest stories are unearthed, one unsolved case at a time. Tonight, we're not going back centuries. We're going back to 1994 inside a hospital emergency room, where something impossible happened. A woman arrived for treatment, and minutes later, the doctors and nurses trying to save her began to collapse one by one. Her body released fumes no one could explain. The autopsy raised more questions than answers. And nearly 3 decades later, the mystery still lingers. Was it science gone wrong, a hospital cover-up, or something far more disturbing? Let's open the file. On Gloria Ramirez, the Toxic Lady, Part 1. The night it happened, it was the evening of February 19, 1994, in Riverside, California. The emergency room at the General Hospital was, as usual, buzzing with urgency. At 8:15 p.m., a 31-year-old woman was wheeled into the trauma bay. Her name was Gloria Ramirez, a mother of 2, recently diagnosed with late-stage cervical cancer. She was barely conscious, her heartbeat erratic, her breathing labored, but no one expected what happened next. The team sprang into action. Doctors inserted AN4, nurses prepared defibrillators. Respiratory therapists adjusted oxygen levels. Then someone noticed it, a strange, oily sheen on Gloria's skin. A garlicky, chemical smell rising from her mouth. A nurse leaned closer and recoiled. Her eyes burned, she staggered back, dizzy. Moments later, she collapsed. Then another nurse fainted, and another. A doctor began vomiting. One staff member couldn't move her limbs. Within minutes, 5 personnel had collapsed, forcing the hospital to evacuate the entire emergency room. Patients were wheeled out. Code Blue was declared. Hazmat suits were considered, but Gloria was still lying on the gurney, barely alive, breathing shallowly, unaware that her very presence was making people sick. And then, she died. At 8:50 p.m., just 35 minutes after she arrived, Gloria Ramirez was pronounced dead. Staff were rushed to other hospitals for treatment. Some recovered quickly. Others suffered lingering symptoms for weeks: numbness, short-term paralysis, difficulty breathing. No one could explain it. Was it a gas leak? A chemical exposure? Was it Gloria? An autopsy was ordered. Blood samples were taken. But the mystery only deepened. How could one woman's body be so toxic that it incapacitated trained professionals? The media jumped on the story. Headlines dubbed her the Toxic Lady, and while most people saw it as an isolated medical event, some suspected something much darker. Part 2. The investigation begins. Clues in the blood. After Gloria Ramirez was pronounced dead, the immediate concern wasn't just how she died, but why the people around her nearly did too. Hazmat teams were called. The was sterilized. Hospital staff were questioned. Blood samples were sealed and shipped to independent labs. The first strange clue came from a routine vial of her blood. Technicians noticed something floating inside manila-colored particles, oddly crystalline, that didn't belong in human blood. Then came the second anomaly. When blood from Gloria's heart was tested, it emitted a sharp ammonia-like smell, chemical, not biological. The blood also showed low levels of oxygen and high acidity, signs of systemic failure. But these findings didn't explain why our staff had collapsed. That's when toxicologists from the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory were called in. These weren't just any scientists, they specialized in exotic compounds and chemical warfare. They analyzed the compounds found in Gloria's blood and pieced together a theory. Could Gloria have used a common over-the-counter pain reliever and somehow turned it into a lethal gas factory inside her own body? Their attention turned to DMSO, dimethyl sulfoxide, a solvent once popular as a home remedy for pain. It was available at hardware stores. Athletes used it to reduce inflammation. And crucially, it smelled like garlic. Was Gloria applying DMSO to her skin to ease the pain of her cancer? If so, when she received oxygen and electric shocks in the could that DMSO have chemically transformed into something dangerous? According to Livermore, yes. They theorized that DMSO, under the right conditions, could be oxidized into dimethyl sulfate, a highly toxic compound known to damage the lungs, nervous system, and more. And the symptoms matched: fainting, nausea, paralysis. It was a plausible explanation, but it raised more questions than answers. Why didn't paramedics collapse in the ambulance if DMSO was already active? Why didn't Gloria herself suffer from obvious effects before the And why did only some people react so severely while others, standing nearby, felt nothing at all? The theory made headlines, but it didn't close the case. The truth was still elusive, because when you peel back the science, nothing was conclusive. Some experts rejected the DMSO theory entirely. Others said it explained too much, too neatly. And Gloria's family, they didn't believe it at all. They believed something was being hidden. Part 3. Cover-up, Theories, Doubts, and Missing Pieces. Gloria Ramirez was dead. The hospital had been evacuated. A scientific theory had been presented. But for many, especially her family, that theory sounded more like a convenient excuse than the truth. They didn't believe Gloria had been self-medicating with DMSO. She wasn't reckless, they said. She was sick but careful. And then there were the missing records. Some test results vanished. Witness reports were never released to the public. Autopsy delays dragged on for months, as if someone was stalling. Her family accused the hospital of negligence, or worse. They believed Gloria was injected with something toxic at the hospital, maybe a wrong drug, maybe a chemical cleaner left in the line. And when things went wrong, a cover-up began. Even some medical staff questioned the official story. Why did only staff inside the trauma room collapse, but not others nearby? Why wasn't Gloria's body immediately treated as hazardous, despite overwhelming symptoms? And what about the manila-colored particles in her blood? Why were they never fully identified? The DMSO theory offered a neat bow, but it lacked the weight of solid proof. Livermore admitted their theory was probable, not certain. Some investigators even asked, could the hospital have been conducting experiments or disposing of hazardous waste inappropriately? Of course, no evidence ever surfaced. But absence of evidence wasn't enough to silence suspicion, especially in a case this bizarre. In time, official statements dried up. The cause of the staff symptoms was listed as mass sociogenic illness, essentially a psychological chain reaction. In plain terms, panic. The argument was that one person fainted. Then others, seeing it, panicked and collapsed too, like a domino effect. But tell that to the staff member who lost control of her limbs for weeks. Tell that to the nurse whose lungs were damaged and never fully healed. Something happened that night, something more than stress. But what? That question still hangs like the chemical haze that once drifted above Trauma Room 1. Part 4. Legacy of the Toxic Lady. Still no answers. Gloria Ramirez was just 31 years old. A mother, a daughter, a woman fighting cancer. She didn't ask to become a case file. She didn't know her final hours would spark fear, suspicion, and controversy that would echo for decades. And yet, that's exactly what happened. Her name lives on, not in medical textbooks, but in whispered conversations and Reddit forums. She's known not as a person, but as the Toxic Lady, a label that strips away her humanity and replaces it with a mystery. To this day, no official cause of the mass collapse at the has been confirmed beyond doubt. No new evidence has surfaced, no definitive test has resolved the debate. And perhaps that's what makes her story so haunting, because it wasn't a plane crash. It wasn't a war, it was just one woman, one body. And somehow, that was enough to bring trained professionals to their knees. What really happened that night in Riverside? Was it a freak chemical chain reaction inside Gloria's dying body? A tragic medical mistake, swept under layers of protocol? Or was it something stranger? Something still hidden, we may never know. But what we do know is this: sometimes the scariest mysteries aren't found in haunted houses or ancient ruins, they're found in hospital rooms, in fluorescent lights, and in the human body itself. If you found this story haunting and fascinating, subscribe to the Timeless File, because the past doesn't always stay buried. Sometimes, it seeps out in the most unexpected ways.